May the 23rd, 2025. Guys, you're looking at an article from spaceweather.com that's been on there since yesterday, still right there in the front cover. It's very good. And when I saw it, I decided to take a deeper dive into some of the links to the different data sets that they used and the information and the scientists. And I saw pretty quickly where it applied to some of the other things that we've been looking at, the Younger Dryas and before that. And so this is really important because it lets us know about something that happened in the past that we had no idea of really, or the strength of it. And can it happen again? It sure can. It says trees remember an Ice Age solar storm. More than 14,000 years ago, there was a solar storm so big, trees remember it. Dwarfing modern solar storms, the event would devastate technology if it happened again today. Spoiler alert, it says it could. Of course it could. The sun, we know in Malachi 4, has some energetic burst coming. Now, if they're as strong as this one was, what we're going to talk about, then they're saying it would have been devastate technology. Guys, it would have devastated everything on the surface of the planet. Technology would have been the least thing that we would have been worrying about. It says the record-strong storm is described by a paper in the upcoming July 2025 edition of the peer-reviewed journal Earth and Planetary Science Letters. It occurred in 12,350 BC and is classified as a Miyake event. That's an extreme solar proton event. Miyake events are solar storms that make the Carrington event of 1859 look puny. Trees remember them in their rings, which store the carbon-14 created by gargantuan storms. At least 6 Miyake events have been discovered and confirmed since Fuchsia Miyake found the first one just in 2012. And going through really they're going around the world researching. It says the list so far includes these dates: 664 to 663 BC, 774 AD, which was very powerful, 993 AD, 5259 BC, 7176 BC, and 12,350 BC. Guys, that date, if you're familiar with some of the last 20,000 years of the geology on the planet, it should ring a bell very quickly. Now, if you think about it, and I did, and I looked it up, I said, well, if you're using carbon dating on tree rings and all, and you're going back almost 15,000 years, how does that work? I mean, we don't have any trees that old on the planet, but we do have what's called petrified wood. The Strong River is basically in our backyard down here, and we grew up swimming there and canoeing it every weekend we could, camping, everything, just loved it. We called it God's country. But we found a lot of petrified wood pieces then, and they're hard as rock, beautiful, you know, and different colors, reds and browns and tans. And so that is what they're using, wood that had been underwater a very, very long time, and the petrified wood. They're saying that the Miyake event in 12,350 BC is especially intriguing. It sure is to me. It appears at a carbon-14 spike in Scots pine trees along the banks of the Drowsat River in France, with a matching beryllium-10 spike in Greenland ice cores. The event was global and based on the size of the spikes, very big. At first, no one could say how big the storm was because it happened during the Ice Age. But carbon-14 storage is complicated. When a solar storm creates carbon-14 in the upper atmosphere, the radioisotope doesn't immediately appear in the woody flesh of trees. Getting there involves months to years of atmospheric circulation influenced by climate and geography, and even then the carbon-14 has to arrive during the tree's growing season. In other words, during the winter or something, it's not going to absorb it. Otherwise, it wouldn't be taken up. High-altitude trees are favored because they encounter the carbon-14 first, while different species each have their own sensitivity. Way up in the mountains, just like flying in an airplane, the radiation's stronger. All these factors are harder to tease out in the Ice Age. Most known Milwaukee events occurred after the Ice Age, guys, which it lasted for 75,000 years. The last one did. During the Holocene, a period of relatively stable and warm climate starting about 12,000 years ago, climate scientists have atmospheric circulation models for the Halcyon. It says, so interpreting Milwaukee events in 7176 BC, 5259 BC, 64 to the 63 BC, 993 AD, 774 AD were relatively straightforward because they were after the Ice Age. Not so the event of 12,350 BC. And what they did, they, again, went around the world. They started looking at the ice sheet boundaries, sea levels, geomagnetic fields that existed during the Pleistocene late glacial period. Using this model, they were able to interpret the tree ring data to 12,350 BC. You know, now they're getting more and more sophisticated in their computers. You've got AI, and you've got different things that do this. And according to their paper, 12,350 BC is the biggest Milwaukee event yet, the biggest they found. It produced a hailstorm of solar particles 500 times greater than the most intense solar storm recorded by modern satellites in 2005. During the 2005 event, an airline passenger flying over the poles might have received a year's worth of sea level cosmic radiation in just 1 hour. During the 12,350 BC event, the same dose would have been received in a mere 8 seconds. This would seem to set a new standard for worst-case scenarios in space weather. However, the real news is deeper. The door to the Ice Age has been kicked open by this event. I'm going to show you the charts. And I've been wondering because I've used these charts on videos for a few years. And there was one event that was not explained, and as a matter of fact, not having to do with this video, but in the Paul Begley Prophecy webinar that's, I think, coming out tonight, we look at these charts for a different reason. But since that event just yesterday, and me looking at this information and, again, digging down, I know now what that big spike of heat was on that chart before the Younger Dryas. Let's take a look at that. And this is what we have now. It starts to the left, 20,000 years ago, and it's coming out of 75,000 years of Ice Age up until right here. I put a blue arrow and a green arrow here. And what this is this heat event. No one could explain it. Suddenly, 75,000 years of Ice Age. Cruising through here, it's 45 degrees C, and so we're having a change. The current level is here. Right there, that's our current temperatures, average. And back then, you were, what, 15 degrees to 20 degrees Celsius colder. Now, so it's cruising along here, 75,000 years frozen planet, almost. Then what? The Bowling-Olorod event happened between here and here. Then comet strikes came in, busted through the atmosphere, instantly flash froze the woolly mammoths. That's how cold it got, because when you let that much, when you open the atmosphere that much, that cold air pours in, and it's the temperature of outer space, 2 degrees Celsius, or Kelvin, so it's very cold. Anyway, what happened right here is exactly what we're talking about. That event where the sudden heat rose this much. Look at that. Suddenly, almost between 15,000 years and maybe 500 years from here to here. And then after 75,000 years, going back a very cold weather. Then when that happened, everything rose up. It was an artificial heating because of the power of this solar storm. This thing was intense. Anyway, it happened right there. The greatest event of the solar memory that we have, going back through all of the information that they found so far. Now, the scientists are continuing to look around the world for different areas and different events like this so that they can track it. But again, we're going back over 14,000 years, nearly 15,000. Now, when you look over here, you see it says BP. That's not me. It says 0. A lot of times you'll see BCE before the current era and all of that, right? But when you see these on these longer charts where it says 0, guys, 9 times out of 10, that's going to be the year 1950, because they use that year as a reference going back 20,000 years. And so that's what 0 means. So we're from 1950 now, what are we, 75 years past that point right there. But these are the average temperatures. Again, 8,200 years ago, there was a drop in cold temperatures. But through here, I want you to notice it was hotter in points than it is now. This is going back, this is 3,000, so around 3,000 plus years ago. It got very hot for several hundred years. And all of these spikes above the line we're at now, which is warm enough for me, indicate hotter temperatures. Now, again, we go into Malachi, we know that there's going to be a solar event with the healing wings of the sun. And I think it has to do with two things: wiping out a lot of interfering technology and a major DNA change or DNA rebuilding event, because I think it's been degraded over thousands of years of medicine, pollution, manipulation, things like that. But anyway, guys, we thought the Carrington event was pretty bad in the 1800s. And then they found this 74, 75 event. And let's look at that just a moment. Now, they've gone back to this event right here, and it's got a chart here on the left that says relative strength from 0 to 80. And the one, that big heating event that we saw that busted 75,000 years of ice age, was right there. You say, well, this is only about 20% in relative strength higher. But guys, that is a tremendous amount. I mean, it's not proportional as when you start getting this high. It's like hurricanes. When you start getting different levels, or tornadoes, it rapidly changes. Now, you come up to pretty close to the current date here, and this would be the 0 points of 775 event was right here. See that? Then Carrington event would have been probably right in somewhere in this area. And then we had the 2005 event they talked about. All of it was minor. The 775 was the strongest they had ever seen. But we're still at a relative strength of 10% stronger than that one with the one that broke the ice age. Now, they're saying this could happen again. Is that what we're seeing? Information's coming out about from Göbekli Tepe and from Derinkuyu, where it had 20,000 people living in it. And they were told, the people back then, by the original people, it's Turkey, but basically the Iranian Sumerian group, they were told this ice age was coming. You're going to have to dig these underground cities. You got a few years of very good weather to get food for your livestock, get food for yourself, and dig these places. Again, Derinkuyu would hold 20,000. They said this ice age for Derinkuyu is what was coming, right? And that it would, and it did. It lasted over 1,000 years. These folks had to be in possibly 200 different cities throughout that area, underground. Some were caved cities, some were dug straight out. Some looked like they were almost melted out. But anyway, this event would be unbelievable. The Carrington event, which really would be way down here on this 0 line, guys, would be nothing. And that's the one that we've always said, well, if we had another Carrington event from the sun, it would wipe out the technology that we have, go back 100 years. And back then, the Carrington event, it was pretty low tech technology. They had telegraphs, and telegraph operators got shocked and electrocuted or burned up lines when the Carrington event happened. But guys, nothing compared to this or the 775 event right there. And so is this what Malachi is talking about? And as always, guys, space weather controls the weather on our planet. And you're looking at live images of the Atlantic Ocean right now. You can see the heat's building off the coast of Africa, and this is the Cabo Verde Islands. Usually this is the area that we'll see them come off during that particular section of hurricane season. They came out 2 days ago, and they're saying there's going to be about 30 named storms, maybe 4 or 5 very powerful. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. And that's what we're going to start seeing now. We've seen systems form in May before, but we're only a week left in May. And then we're going to be from June to the end of November in full-blown hurricane season. And the hurricanes help. They can be destructive, or they can be very helpful, or both. And the one thing about them crossing the Atlantic, or really anywhere, the big ones, they cool our planet. Without that funneling of that rapid rotation of the hot air off the surface and getting it very high into the atmosphere and cooling it and dropping it back down, this Earth probably wouldn't exist right now as we know it. It would be too hot. So the balance of it all works, but sometimes it can get extreme. And the reason I'm pointing that out is, again, now we know what broke the Ice Age up, and we figured it would be something like the sun, but a solar blast that powerful, thousands of times more powerful than some of the ones that we thought were strong, it changes the entire game. And then you had, again, that heat from that coronal mass ejection or solar flare, whatever it was. They only have the carbon-14 dating, so they don't have all the information of exactly what caused it, but it was a solar proton event. When you have all of that happening, you had the 75,000 years of Ice Age, that sudden heating from that coronal mass ejection, we'll just say that, solar flare, and then it cooled back down. Now it's going back up. The cooling down was the Younger Dryas, and so we had a very fast rise in heat, then a very long cold spell over 1,000 years, probably 13,000, somewhere like that, of people living underground, especially in the northern hemisphere. It's pretty much a worldwide event, but we know that all through Turkey and all through the U.S., the Algonquin Indians have recorded the events of an event that brought that heat back down from the CME and caused the cooling of the Younger Dryas. And that was what all of the Derinkuyu places were built about. But that's just touching on it, guys. In the webinar that Paul has tonight at Paul Begley Prophecy, there's much deeper details about Göbekli Tepe, Derinkuyu, and all that. But what we didn't have in the webinar was the article yesterday about this event, because we looked at it, Paul and I did during the webinar, that heat spot. Neither one of us knew what it was. Now we do. And that just tells you that the power of the sun, guys, could be so devastating that nothing could survive on the surface. But we know that this time it won't be by ice or flooding. It will be by fire. We're watching it, guys. You watch it. Very interesting. To me, it's a heads up. Be safe.